Hey, this is Tommy Smith with Rattle and Hum Sports, rnhsports.com. We're here after the Oklahoma Sooners' big 52-46 victory over the TCU Horned Frogs at Amon G Stadium in Fort Worth. With me, as always, is Matthew Postins to go over this game. Matthew, how you doing?
I'm tired. It was about a 3-hour, 45-minute game, something like that. It just, play a little defense, guys. Come on.
Well, it was it was a shootout. It was an awfully big win for the Oklahoma Sooners. TCU got out to a 21-7 lead, and then they seemed to stall in the second and third quarter. A big rally for TCU in the fourth quarter. Talk a little bit about the way the game, flowed.
Well, it flowed in waves, honestly. I mean, TCU got up 21-7, and then Oklahoma outscored them, I think, 21-3 in the second quarter, and then shut them out in the third with a couple of touchdown runs by Mixon and Pirine thrown in. And then just when you thought Oklahoma had it, covered, they had it taken care of, TCU roared back like they did last year in Norman, cut it down to 3, and then their defense just couldn't quite get the stop they needed late. In enough time, honestly, to give Kenny Hill and the offense enough time to really get the football up the field and make something happen to try and tie and win the game. For Oklahoma, they probably needed this a little bit more than TCU. I mean, TCU at least had a Big 12 win on their ledger already.
Right.
OU was coming off the loss to Ohio State, had the bye week. I just don't know that they could have afforded to lose another game like that to another ranked opponent, and especially going into the Red River game next week with Texas.
Right.
They were lucky to get out with a win, and they really needed it.
Yeah, and they keep themselves in the race for the Big 12 conference title. As you and I have talked about, it very well could be a two-loss team that takes the title this year.
Yeah, don't think that TCU's out of this just because they've got one loss. I mean, they're long season. They're still in this. Yeah.
After the game, Gary Patterson talked about being very proud of the way his team fought back that rally there in the fourth quarter. He was disappointed in losing by 6 points, but proud of the way his team fought back, and did speak about the lack of production there in the second and third quarter. You talked to Bob Stoops after the game.
Yeah, I think Bob was just really happy with his defense in the second and the third quarters of that game. He felt like there were some execution issues early. Baker Mayfield coughed up another football early in the game that led to the first TCU touchdown. They had some secondary breakdowns in the first quarter. He felt like they really sewed those up after the first quarter, and it showed.
Right.
The way their defense played in the second and third quarter, they really put TCU's offense on lockdown. Just a field goal in the second and the third quarters for TCU. Meanwhile, Baker Mayfield and that offense really got rolling. You can see what OU can do when they've got all those weapons running. They really want to establish the run, and they really did that tonight between Mixon and Pirine, and even Baker Mayfield throwing in 55 yards rushing with a couple of touchdowns. Bob Stoops was very complimentary of his quarterback after the game. Felt like that's the best total game he's played all year.
Yeah.
And it showed. He seemed much more comfortable in the pocket, more comfortable than I think he's been in any game this year. And I don't know if it's just he got out of the gate slow, or maybe he got psyched out by all the Heisman talk. I don't know. But he looked very comfortable after the fumble early in the football game. And D.D. Westbrook, huge game for him as a wide receiver. Big game. I mean, he took the TCU secondary for a ride a little bit, in the middle of that football game.
And a big part of them moving ahead the way that they did. And we should mention that Baker Mayfield came off the field late in the second quarter, right before halftime, limping a little bit. Obviously, an ankle, maybe a foot injury.
Well, Bob didn't really specify what it was after the game. All Bob said was he's fine. Okay. And he would not have come back if he was not fine. So, he didn't get into specifics about what it was. He just said he's fine.
He had a tremendous game. And on the other side of the ball at quarterback, Kenny Hill had a big game, throwing for almost 500 yards and 5 touchdowns.
The production's amazing with him. I mean, it really is. I mean, it makes you wonder what in the world happened to him at A&M.
Yeah.
Maybe it was just being a freshman, the youth, being on the field. Maybe that was it. And obviously having to follow Johnny Manziel was probably no picnic.
Sure.
But, I mean, this offense, it looked tailor-made for Trevon Boykin the last couple of years. It looks completely tailor-made for him. And I mean, 2 500-yard passing games now the 400 the 449 yards and 5 touchdowns tonight. He's well on his way to being in competition for Offensive Player of the Year of the conference.
Sure, and I think that has a lot to say about Sonny Cumbie and Doug Meacham, running this offense.
The fact that both of them are still here is really kind of surprising to me.
Sure.
I kind of felt like Doug Meacham was going to be in a head coaching position next year, or this year. This year. He was up for the North Texas job and didn't get it. I would be stunned if he was still in TCU come 2017.
And then as far as how this impacts the Big 12 race, we've talked about neither one of these teams being out of it.
Right.
How do you think this affects Kansas going forward as they play TCU, going forward as they play Kansas next week?
Well, if you're TCU, you ought to be ticked off, and you ought to go hang half 100 on Kansas on the road. Let's be honest. You can say this is a balanced conference. You can say everybody's down. You can say whatever you want. This is a wide open league. Yeah. Kansas kind of hung in there with Texas Tech on Thursday night, and we don't have a clear idea of how Patrick Mahomes is after the shoulder injury in the third quarter. Baylor nearly lost to Iowa State on the road today. West Virginia escaped at home against Kansas State by a point. The only game that was really a blowout today was the Oklahoma State game, beating Texas at home, and then Oklahoma has to survive here to win against TCU. All coaches talk all the time about how every week in conference plays a battle, and it's kind of a cliche. It's a bit less of a cliche this year in the Big 12. Like we said, the winner of this conference could have 2 losses. Or the team that ties to win the conference could have 2 losses. I think all it means is that the Big 12 can basically kiss going to the college football playoff goodbye. I mean, I know West Virginia and I know Baylor are still undefeated, but that's not going to last forever. They're not going to go through the whole season undefeated. And even if they do, I'm not sure they'll have the strength of schedule to do it. So it's really all about who wins the Big 12, who gets that New Year's Eve or day bowl berth in the group of 6 bowl games, and then everybody else goes to a bowl game. But I mean, a month into the season, I think it's pretty clear to everybody who is astute enough as a college football observer that the Big 12 just isn't going to have a team.
I think the Washington Huskies had something to say about that last night with a big win over Stanford.
I mean, I think it was only a matter of time before Chris Peterson finally built what he was looking to build in Washington. I think a lot of people don't realize the teams he built at Boise State were really a lot tougher than people thought they were. Everybody kind of thought they were just huge offensive teams. Nobody really understood how tough those teams were, and you have to be tough to play in a place like Boise, where it's 40 degrees half the time you play. He's finally brought that toughness to Washington. It took him a few years to do it, but they've got some really good kids on offense. Their quarterback, Jake Browning, Myles Gaskin. They've got a really good defense right now. We just saw Utah lose to Cal earlier today. I mean, the Pac-12's nuts, and I'm really thrilled because, as an editor of College Football America, there are some weeks where I'm not at Big 12 games. I'm going to be a lot of Pac-12 games. So it's going to be a lot of fun, honestly. And because of all that, the Pac-12 might not get a team in the college football playoff. I mean, you've really got to have one dominant team in a conference. And right now, to me, the only dominant team in any conference is Alabama. I mean, I don't think we know enough about Louisville yet in the ACC. Michigan looks pretty good in the Big 10, but Ohio State does too. I mean, right now, you're looking at the Power 5 schools. Alabama's the only one where you really just say, they're going to go.
They're cream of the crop, right? Next week, you'll be taking in Tulsa and SMU for us up in Tulsa.
Yeah, that should be fun. 2 highly energized offensive football teams. I was really impressed with some of what SMU did offensively against TCU. I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do in kind of a more balanced matchup. Tulsa really likes to throw the football. They're in that Baylor mode of spread it out, lots of tempo, run the football well. That should be really interesting. And then Saturday, I'll get my Big 12 game in. Iowa State at Oklahoma State, 2:30 game. Hey, like I said, Iowa State pushed Baylor to the brink today. It took a field goal with 3 seconds left in the game for Baylor to win that game. Oklahoma State better be ready.
That's going to catch up to the Baylor Bears before the season's over. We will take a look back at this weekend and on Monday. Post our Big 12 show probably Tuesday as we look forward to next week in the Big 12 conference. Anything else you want to add before we wrap it up here?
I won't tell you the score of the Clemson game.
Thank you. I'm recording that, and I look forward to watching that as I get home.
Somebody else might, but I won't.
Okay. Thanks a lot for tuning in. My name is Tommy Smith, again with rnhsports.com. Matthew Postins, our Big 12 contributor. We'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you.